Stepping out of my comfort zone is something I think about as a way to grow. It means pushing myself into new, sometimes uncomfortable situations. But I don't think this is the same as doing my best. Both are important, but do they work differently and or achieve different outcomes? My comfort zone is where I feel safe and in control with familiar routines and activities that don't stress me out. Staying in the zone feels safe because I avoid anything that's too challenging. Testing the limits of my comfort zone might mean trying new things, speaking without a script, or going somewhere different for coffee. It can also mean avoiding putting myself out there, not doing anything too tiring, and not engaging in radical thinking. Doing my best means putting in maximum effort. It involves dedication, hard work, and perseverance. It's about using all of my related skills and knowledge and exhausting my energy to achieve the best possible results. It means that I am ignoring my comfort because the outcome is more important to me. What does this mean in the real world? Are there other ways to look at this? Do testing the limits of our comfort zones and doing our best have different goals? We're about to find out because the show begins now.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending where you're from. Welcome back to the In the Blood podcast. This week, we explore our relationships with self, our relationships with others, and how the two are connected. I am your host, Jason the Dice Man Moore, and with me, as always, is my brother, my partner in crime, and the man beside me, Mr. A.C. Bergen-Fischer.
Hello, hello, hello.
When in the moment do we need to push that kind of dedication? And what are we pushing it to? Are we putting it so it's just, a base of our love relationship? Are we separating it out and doing it just for our platonic relationships? There's a lot inside of that statement, and I think it's fantastic to delve into. Let's take it away, brother.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I know that I have mentioned probably on this podcast and others before, saying that, in the context of, say, parenting, most parents will say, oh, I did my best. And I've always pushed back on that, saying, well, no, you didn't do your best. You tested the outer limits of your comfort zone and then called it your best. But what I've been wondering the last week or so is it possible to do our best and still be inside our comfort zone? Like, is saying, well, I did my best while everybody else saw you being comfortable, like, is that the lie and the cop-out that it actually appears to be to the outsider?
Well, I know in general conversation, sometimes I'll say that, I did the best I could. I never say I did my very best, because I don't think I did. In the moment, looking at it from an inside perspective, it's really easy to say, okay, you know what, like, this is my situation right now. I got to leave work. I got to go pick up my kids. So the best thing I can do right now is get myself some time off and go and deal with the situation. And in some of those situations, in hindsight, no, the best thing I could have done, leave the little bugger sit in the office for the day, do his punishment, and then pick him up at the end of the day and discuss what happened and why he was in the office all day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, I mean, like, instead of, like, aggressively pushing and tiring yourself out, you're realizing that the best move was actually the one that was the least demanding of you, right?
Oh, yeah, because I was always in the mind frame that I had to do everything I could do for my kids. And to me, in the moment, raising my children, that meant being there for them every step of the way. And it's something I chose to turn my life into. People say, well, my kids are my life and this and that and this is that. And I don't think that's always the case. I think a lot of the time when people say that, it's a statement in reflection saying, no, I didn't want them to be my whole life. They were my whole life because I didn't have an option because I had children. I always felt I had an option, and I chose that life. So I didn't get an opportunity to look at it from outside the box in and say, okay, you know what? I got to step back and say, okay, this is a situation. What do I want to do in this situation? It was hear, respond, act.
Well, I think too, like, sticking with the parenting example, I think your approach was a little bit different from what I see most parents doing. Because I mean, you kind of approached parenting like most people would approach a career, right? If somebody wants to have a career, they want to be like a bank manager or something like that, they're not going to like show up, take the help wanted sign out of the bank window, and then just grind their way to the top. No, they're going to go to university. They're going to get a related education. They're going to make sure that they situate themselves academically and intellectually to the point where not only are they qualified, but once they show up and they get hired to do the job, they're comfortable to execute it without really breaking a sweat. With you and your kids, I mean, you always had a decent sense of what was coming, which was older kids.
Yep.
Dealing with older kid stuff and the related challenges. So you were constantly reading and preparing yourself and educating and situating yourself so that when these older kids came along with their older kid stuff, you didn't have to break a sweat because you broke the sweat when nobody was watching. You made the parenting look easy, but I mean, it was only easy in the moment because it wasn't easy 6 months before the moment.
Or years. Oh, my kids said it. As soon as they're going to be a teenager, I got to take a course on how to deal with a teenager and adjust it for our lifestyle.
And it's weird, because when I've seen a lot of couples go through it, and it's like they find out that the bun is in the oven, there's a baby on the way. They'll pick up the What to Expect When You're Expecting book, and they'll prepare, aggressively prepare for that day when the baby pops out. And then from that day forward, they're just stressing out and fumbling their way through. I mean, they start off on the right track. Like, hey, we need to know these things. And for some reason, they abandon that thirst and the need for knowledge in favor of, basically getting punch drunk from fighting so hard to do, quote unquote, their best, while ultimately accomplishing nothing. Maybe the more I talk my way through it, the more I'm thinking the comfort zone isn't a bad thing at all.
Well, I'm of two minds on that, because on one side, I think it's not bad at all to put yourself in a position where you're educated and it's a comfort zone. But it's another thing, while you're in that comfort zone, put yourself in a position where you're preparing to be in the comfort zone 5 years later. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, we're using parenting this example, but even if it's making money or releasing a product or, even going shopping. You already went shopping. It's not like you get up the 15th of next month and just randomly go shop and say, okay, what do we need? And you think about it. A lot of people do that, but throughout the month, I'm on my phone making a list. I used to write it down, but now paper is so like 18th century, I don't use it anymore. But I'll make a list. I'll start making the list the day after I do my shop, preparing for the 15th to the 20th of the next month for the next shop. Okay, we're out of this, write it down. Okay, we're out of this, write it down. And if we don't pick it up at the store because it's a necessity, then it stays on the list and becomes our part of our shop value. So working extra hard to get out of your comfort zone, I don't think is a necessity. If you create a situation where systematically you are pushing yourself, you're always a little bit discomfort, but more so in a comfort zone, because now it's becoming a routine, it's becoming a habit to keep yourself out of a comfort zone, which is now your comfort zone.
Yeah, I think there's this unfair negative stigma that's attached to being in a comfort zone too. Like it gets equated with a rut, when really a comfort zone is just, well, it's just that you're where you feel comfortable. And if I'm looking at myself, I mean, I do my best innovation when I'm pushed to the limit, when I'm outside of that comfort zone. I think I do my best thinking, but I do my best doing when I'm inside the comfort zone, if that makes sense. I think I like maybe the contrast between the two manifests differently for different people. But the more we talk this through, the more I can really see the value in both, which is not something I expected. I really thought that we would start cracking this nut open and the conversation would be a little bit more adversarial than it's become.
Well, and you also got to think, like, comfort to everybody in its own is different. Like somebody who's running a business, and I'm talking even a small business or a big enterprise, a big undertaking like IBM or something. The person at the top, if they're a successful business, is always living on the edge of discomfort, if not fully in discomfort, to push their business, to make new strides, to find new advertising, to go in a new route, to continue the cash flow, to continue helping people, whatever your business happens to be. So their comfort zone is always out of their comfort zone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, I'm not trying to zone out on you. I'm wanting to process what you're saying, but at the same time, I got this other train of thought that started brewing too in response to your words, which is thinking about what comfort actually means. You know, because I can only speak definitively from my own experience, right? For me, comfort means, like, if I'm gonna paint a picture of comfort, I'm sitting on something cushy. I'm feeling that the room is at a good temperature for me. I could just as easily wake up or go to sleep. It's just there's no threats, there's no unnecessary or unwanted excitement. It's just this is an ideal environment.
So let's put you in a different mindset. Now take yourself back to when you were running construction jobs. Tell me what your comfort was then.
Well, see, and that's it was exactly where I was hoping to go. I mean, I'm not that guy anymore, but I know how the mind of that person works, where my comfort zone was one where everything is exploding and on fire around me. It's just like pure chaos and adrenaline, and nobody knows how to navigate this chaotic environment except me. And I get pushed above the, pardon my language, the clusterfuck that I'm sitting in the midst of, because I'm elevated above the flames and the explosion by the people who desperately need my insight and guidance. So I would get this artificial comfort bubble, if that makes sense. And because that's a very specific type of comfort zone, an exciting one that fed my fragile ego, I found that more often than not at that stage of life, I would seek out things that other people might perceive to be horribly uncomfortable.
Right. And, in there saying, okay, so we always say pushing the envelope or getting out of your comfort zone. Back then, your uncomfortable zone would have been sitting around the house doing nothing. I do remember you would go freaking crazy if you had nothing to do.
Yeah. True.
So it's all related to our personal life skills, and I think a lot of people have to examine what's really your comfort zone. Before you can even start exploring, do I want to push myself out of my comfort zone? You have to explore in depth, what is your comfort zone? And in your mind, what does getting out of that comfort zone look like? Because, somebody who is, like myself, a third party onlooker to your situation, I can very easily say, well, you know what? No, his uncomfortable zone might have been fishing, sitting out on a river for 4 days, fishing and sleeping in a tent. But that's not necessarily the truth. On your off hours, those kind of challenges might be an equivalent adrenaline boost that keeps you in the same mindset as when you're working, which is comfort for you. So again, that's why I reverted to, and I remember you even saying in the past, I can't just sit at home. It drives me freaking crazy. Either I got to get out and do something, like go into Steveston and go to the market, or I got to go to work and do something.
I like that you're going down this avenue of suggesting that we all get more honest with what our comfort zone actually looks like to us. after taking the time to investigate and answering the tough questions, we don't have to necessarily justify our comfort zone to anybody else. And our comfort zone doesn't need to match the people around us. At the same time, if we understand that our comfort zone doesn't fit the cookie cutter model that maybe we expect that all of the rest of society shares, maybe we can be a little bit more understanding of the people that are in our lives. Because I mean, again, using the example you brought up, like that time in my life where I was go, 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 I had a really difficult time understanding how you were so okay with not that. You know, like I would look at you and think, wow, this guy is lazy and agoraphobic because he's just happy being at home and not leaving. Like, what the hell is up with that? But an interesting thing has happened over the years. Our roles have kind of switched. You've become a little bit more go, 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 and I've become a little bit more lazy and agoraphobic.
Yep.
But I mean, now we've got that understanding of each other because we both know where the other person is coming from. And it's not like any two people need to completely change roles and in order to put themselves in each other's shoes. I think just extending that courtesy to the people we care about and saying, you know, okay, so you don't do things my way. That's cool. We can even have a conversation. Like, can you let me in? Can you tell me like why it is that this works for you? Because from my perspective, I just don't get it. And I would like to, because I care about you.
We actually had that conversation when I did all that plumbing in Tawasin in the crawl space. When we cut the water lines down and changed the total underneath water lines, we had that conversation about, you know, you got to stop judging me because this is what's happening. And you came to the realization of, okay, can you tell me why then? Like, that was a big change for you. And just explaining calmly what was going on in my head and my mindset, you know, totally opened your eyes. And, you know, back then we were both pretty much pieces of crap. But
oh yeah.
but the mindset on both our sides, because before that, you know, yeah, we had our conversations and there was a time and place when we had like in-depth conversations. But even my mindset at that point changed because, well, you know what, like even when we're at work, we can have these kind of conversations now. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, two guys like cutting out old copper and being emotionally intimate at the same time.
Yeah, when we had that renovation business and everything was going decent, not only did we make okay money, we also grew a lot. Which, you know, and I know a lot of people get along on the job site for the sake of getting along, but what we didn't realize, and we do see now, is that was probably some of the best growth we ever had.
Well, I mean, I think that we've always benefited from kind of a unique dynamic between the two of us. And this is something that a lot of the listeners from this show probably don't know, is how much we desperately wanted to not be friends with each other. How much, like, I would go so far as to say that I actually freaking hated you when we first met each other. Could not stand you, avoided every opportunity to have contact with you. Presumably the same was reciprocated.
Except for being on Team Bergen, because just sticking it to the bosses was fun.
Yeah. But I mean, something interesting happened over the years for those who don't know, and that was that no matter how much Jason and I tried to extricate ourselves from each other's lives, circumstances kept on pushing us back together, just in the most aggravating and unavoidable ways. And after years of trying to basically fight the currents that life was sweeping us up in, we just figured, you know what? Collectively, we give up. I'm stuck with this jerk. He's stuck with a jerk from his perspective too. If we're stuck in it together, then, you know, we're doing hard time. Let's make the best of it.
Talk about getting out of your comfort zone.
Right?
That's probably a premium example. because both of us were absolutely comfortable hating each other and avoiding each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the realization came that, okay, you know what? No, we both got to get in this dinghy and float together, I guess. What the hell? That was hard.
Well, we were metaphorically like punching ourselves out, right? Like to the point of exhaustion, trying to just destroy this idea of us as a collective.
Yep.
And getting into the comfort zone, whether we were in there by force or by choice, I mean, but getting into that comfort zone, we became much more productive as a collective. I mean, now we don't have to punch ourselves until our arms are tired. We can just sit down and calmly get things done, which I think is what we're doing right now, even having this conversation on this podcast.
Right. I think another, so going back to those days when we hated each other and we worked at Stream, the one time that we kind of got along was when we were going after other people who we both associated as assholes or douchebags.
Mm-hmm. Well, that whole enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing.
That was a very high proponent in our relationship.
Well, if either of us had been any smarter back then, I think we probably would have realized that there was a pretty big clue there, which was that we were much better as a team than we were as opponents. So
there is something else that I've noticed. And like you mentioned earlier about, putting in maximum effort and it requires maximum dedication or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems a lot like when we were doing it, we weren't really putting in a maximum effort. We were putting in a maximum effort to try to stay away from each other. But we weren't trying hard to get out of our comfort zone. We were kind of forced into our uncomfort zone.
There actually was something weirdly ironic about all of that, because you were, like, speaking again only from my perspective, you to me represented a threat to my comfort zone, which is why I was so aggressively trying to defend my comfort zone against you. But in doing so, I poisoned my own comfort zone. I only got comfortable once I resigned myself to the fact that, like, this guy's not going anywhere, and whether he likes it or not, neither am I.
In looking at it, I think, again, this is from my perspective, my personal opinion. I think subconsciously we realized we were a good team, but at that moment we just didn't want to be a team. So we fought it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I would hate to think that our situation was super unique. There's got to be somebody listening who's nodding along and thinking, crap, that person I work with, that friend of my partner's, that whoever it is in your community that just keeps popping up when you wish they would just like pop in front of a bus. Maybe you should stop fighting it and just accept the fact that maybe the two of you are meant to be in each other's lives. Maybe not, but there's only one way to find out, and that's to give the situation a chance, to explore it, to stop fighting something that is obviously overwhelming you. Just take it as it comes. And I mean, this person who I met 22 years ago, who I hated, and I would have happily not just watched him pop in front of a bus, I would have happily pushed him in front of a bus just to make him go away, has not only become a colleague, an acquaintance, a friend, but somebody who is family, a brother, that somebody I'm closer to than any blood relation I think ever could be. And it's not that I made the noble decision to do the right thing. It's just, I got tired of fighting things that I just was not strong enough to fight. I gave into it. And as a result, look at the beautiful thing that's come away. Mm-hmm. This is within reach for anybody who's listening to this, who's got that difficult, aggravating person in their life.
Yeah, take a moment and find out why that person's aggravating. Maybe there's an underlying relationship there that you don't see. That's why it's so aggravating.
Yeah, fair enough. Because I mean, as you and I have learned a lot over the years, I mean, while there are still very, very obvious differences between you and I, in many ways, I think we hold up a mirror to each other, which might have been a lot of the jagged edges between us in the beginning, is seeing things in each other and not wanting to see those things in each other about ourselves, because like, I've already decided you're a douchebag. If I share characteristics with this douchebag, then I am also one, and I don't want to be one.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and that's it. Like I love the mirror example because it shows that you can do the exact same action, but it's parallelly. It's exact opposite. So in the mirror, you hold up your right hand. Technically, I hold up my left.
Fair enough. Okay, so before we wrap things up, did you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, of course I do. I love to talk. I love to hear myself talk. Of course I got a closing thought. Everybody out there, take an opportunity to examine yourself. Take an opportunity to examine what your comfort zone in, and realistically take a moment and think, what is outside of my comfort zone? What is really going to make me uncomfortable? And I'm not saying to do it, but I'm saying to judge it for yourself, because it's your situation. Judge it in the moment and see if that's where you want to go. But make sure you're coming from a place that is truly your comfort zone. Because if you kind of think, well, this is kind of my comfort zone, and then look outside, you're kind of going to get outside of your comfort zone.
No, that's powerful stuff. And as always, if anybody's interested in maybe connecting with Jason and or I in the context of coaching sessions, feel free to reach out to us via email, inthebloodpod@gmail.com, and we would be happy to set something up with you. Also, if you got thoughts on what we've spoken about today or any other topic, again, feel free to reach out via the same email. As always, it has been a pleasure being able to share with everybody who's listening. It's been a pleasure sitting down with Jason Diceman Moore. And as always, my friends, until next time, much love.